Welcome to the Sportscast, October 13th, 2021. If you haven't yet, please subscribe in all our channels, YouTube, Twitch.tv, and Apple Podcasts. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please leave a rating and review. It will help us out tremendously. And also visit our website, thesportscast.net, thesportscast.net. And also follow us on Twitter at The Sportscast1. We also have an app, The Sportscast, downloaded. You can hear Alabama games in the Sportscast radio station. The United States soccer team has had one heck of a couple of months, winning the Nations League, a new soccer tournament here in the CONCACAF region, and have won the Gold Cup, the biggest trophy you can get in CONCACAF after the World Cup. But now they're in World Cup qualifications. And you can ask some fans that are worried about it. They're kind of panicking, even though we're number 2. I'm not a panic guy. I see things how it is. You know, take it one game at a time, maybe, which is what head coach Greg Berhalter could be thinking. And today we have a guest, a man that I met on Twitter Spaces, the new Clubhouse that could take over Clubhouse. We'll see what happens in history. Justin Simmons. He is from Austin, Texas. Hey, Justin, welcome to the Sportscast.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Santiago. Yeah, I believe we were both in the Alexi Lawless chat and kind of just talking about how U.S. soccer is. And I do get an opportunity to do that, get to express my thoughts usually on a weekly basis here in Austin. But it's always nice to have another platform to talk about the United States, especially when they choked as big as Alabama did against Texas A&M this past week.
Okay, I will talk about that, but because of time. But you are actually on Alexi Lawless more than one time. Is it because he knows you, or is it because you're so good, or he just randomly picks you?
Nah, man, I wish it was something like that, but honestly, it's just luck at the draw. And, you know, I told him, and I'm honest, I like to listen in just because, you know, he gives a chance for everybody to kind of talk. And even on traditional radio, yeah, you know, I'll ask for call-ins. Yes, I'll ask for texts, but it's not the same as actually giving somebody else the forum and having some pretty good conversations. Not everything is so soccer-based, and that's what I really dug about it. And you really get a good sense of idea of how he's really thinking. Because, I mean, he doesn't really hold back on TV, but he definitely doesn't hold back in his own personal Twitter space.
He's definitely one of my favorite, well, the favorite of mine when it comes to U.S. soccer. I think he brings a different perspective than the other commentators. And I've been following him since the 94 World Cup. My parents are from Colombia, so I remember that USA-Colombia game in World Cup 94. And, of course, if you watch like the ESPN documentary of the two Escobars, he's in it as well. Tell us a brief history of yourself, your bio, and your soccer history.
Oh, I mean, very similar to you. I grew up in Texas, though, right on the border in South Texas. So despite that, soccer really isn't the big sport there. It's high school football, like everything else in Texas, right? Even on the border. But I do recall getting a whole bunch of like free USA soccer stuff one year. And it was that same year of the 94 World Cup. And I was one of those kids that's like 10, 11, watching this thing for the very first time, trying to understand like what the big deal is. And then it finally clicked. You know, we're in that match against Brazil and we have to fight resiliently going against those 10 guys. And we almost pull off beating the guys that end up winning the whole World Cup. And that's when you're just like, oh, Kobe Jones. Oh, Alexi Lawless. Oh, Tony Meola. Oh, man, I love all these guys, you know, Casey Keller, you know, later on. And it's just one of those things that I always ended up watching. So yeah, I think I've been a hardcore USMT fan like since that 94 World Cup. Obviously saddened by what happened in 98, even though I didn't understand all the political side behind it. Very, very bad performance. But then 2002 happens like right when I'm in high school. I'm like, we might actually do this. We might actually get a World Cup. So at that point, it's like, okay, I already bought in. I cannot stop watching. It's essentially what happened. And my other friends are from Mexico. And they all had club teams in Europe that they would follow. So obviously with the help of FIFA, the video game, you know, back in the day on the PS2 back then, and with my best friend from Mexico who was a Liverpool fan, I'm like, I'll choose Man City because they're awful and Claudio Reyna plays for Man City at the time. And I didn't know that they would get bought by the Sheik and that they would become championship winning club. But yeah, ever since then, I've just really followed it. And as a broadcaster, nobody ever wanted to do the soccer games because they didn't really understand the sport. And you have to at least have a basic understanding to even play FIFA. So it's just kind of grown from there. And I'm one of those dudes that just sits here, even on my off days, and will watch tactic videos about all these sports I cover. And I'm not sure if it's really ever going to come in handy, but in some cases it does.
Yeah, as he was saying, World Cup USA '94 was the start of my soccer World Cup journey. Actually, a little bit before that. Actually, in '93, when Colombia beat Argentina 5-0 was the start, and then of course went into '94 World Cup, where everyone thought Colombia was a favorite. Everyone thought that Colombia would beat USA in a blowout. Turned out to be total opposite. They choked. Of course, you can watch that ESPN movie documentary, The Two Escobars. It explains it really well, what was happening inside. But yeah, I became a soccer fan then afterwards, became more of a USA fan by the day. 98, what you were saying, was a really tough tournament. 2002, Landon and Beasley came out, and they were explosive, and then the rest is history. Now we're dealing with a new generation, which is, they say, is probably the best soccer generation ever. The golden generation, obviously winning 2 trophies already, Nations League and the Gold Cup. But the World Cup qualifiers, as I said at the beginning of the show, has not been pristine. Hercules Gomez said today he's only seen 2 good halves. And they lost against Panama 1-0. I'm not surprised, Justin. I've always seen Panama as the dark horse, like the wild card that could definitely disrupt things. I think they'll qualify, but I think they'll be at going to that playoff against South America. What were your thoughts over that loss against Panama?
Awful, man. It was just awful. And it happens every time that this team heads out on the road in CONCACAF qualifying. They just don't bring it. And we were talking about the teams of the past. Those 94 teams, the 98 team, the 2002 team, etc. The one thing, they weren't going to be the most talented teams in the World Cup after they qualified, but you knew that they were definitely going to be some of the gutsiest teams, and that they weren't going to let you run them over, and that they were going to fight the entire 90 minutes, regardless if they got the result that they were looking for. And you don't see that with this team. And this isn't the first time. This isn't the first time under Berhalter. So I still feel, despite being at the top of qualification right now, sitting in the second spot behind L3, that, this is what, you being Colombian, you understand, this is what other countries do when it comes to World Cup. It's like, no, you don't get a break. You don't deserve a break until you qualify. That's the whole point of this, because we already missed out last cycle. And we have to make it this cycle. But the problem is that this all stems throughout the whole United States Soccer Federation, because we haven't qualified for the Olympics in 3 straight Olympic qualifying cycles. And that's where the youth development is really supposed to stem from. And we haven't produced that.
Yeah, that's something that has been a big question mark for the past couple of years. As you were saying, the team has been very passive, lackadaisical. I guess they're, like Hercules Gomez, which kind of nailed it. We only had 2 good halves these past couple of games. But do you think it's start to hit the panic mode, even though we're in second place? I know people were calling Berhalter's head after the Panama game, and I think the game that we lost, that we tied Canada. Should we hit a panic, or maybe, hey, let's wait and see? We'll probably be Costa Rica and we'll be fine. What do you think?
I don't think that's a guarantee, though. You think about what Costa Rica has, and while it's not exactly world beaters, you still have Keylor Navas, and that guy is still amazing. And he could definitely change the tide on us, because even though we say that Pepe is the real deal, the fact that this whole qualifying cycle is resting on the shoulders of an 18-year-old that's just about to have this huge explosive impact on his career, hopefully getting a chance to go play in Europe soon, that really worries me. There is no reason why our goal scoring should have to rely on some kid from El Paso, Texas, who is just starting to spread his wings, proverbially, to become hopefully one of the next big American stars in the world of soccer.
Pepe has scored, I believe, 2 to 3 goals already in this World Cup cycle. Well, like the biggest question mark with Berhalter in the U.S. is inconsistency. I mean, he's been changing rosters every game almost, and that's something that's been a big concern. There's an argument. Well, if you're in the World Cup qualification, you try to get try to put like the exact same roster every time. What are your thoughts over like his roster decisions?
I mean, I understand that we would all like to see some consistency. Unfortunately, injuries do happen. There are players that are unavailable, so that definitely would change the tactics. But I think the bigger issue is just that we know that he's brand new at this, and you're coming in to lead a national team with little to no experience, hoping to qualify for the World Cup after we didn't qualify last year. Like, if I just say that on paper, regardless of who the head coach is, that sounds kind of weird, doesn't it? Like, we are the United States of America. We have some money in the federation. We could go hire a big-time coach. Like, my thing has always been Piojo Herrera. I don't know why. I like his passion. I think that's something that U.S. soccer needs, especially at the very top levels, because when you are a professional player in this sport or you cover this sport, it can be quite lackadaisical because, let's be honest, most of the time, most people don't care what the results are. Because it's soccer. You get to coast by. But if this was the NFL, oh yeah, you'd be hitting the panic button right now, being like, oh, is the team going to make the playoffs? Do we need to make a change? Is it time to get rid of this head coach? So, like, why do we treat soccer differently? Like, the only way for it to get better is to demand the same from what we demand from our other sports teams.
That is,
at least for me.
Yeah, no, that is correct. And I've been hearing a lot of comparisons to like CONMEBOL teams, South American teams, where they want to, like, every game, even the away games, you want to win it. You want to go win it in Colombia, want to win it in Brazil, things like that. Where's the fight? Where's the grit?
Inexcusable that they came up with no points against Panama. Who plays for Panama? Like, seriously. Like, there is no reason why they couldn't get a draw. Inexcusable. Especially after the debacle of the last qualifying cycle. They knew, Berhalter knew what was at stake. And that was the team that he decided to send out on the pitch. I mean, there's just questions all around.
Areola, do you think he's a right fit for this squad?
Man, he looked really good against Jamaica, but then again, you have to take a look at where Jamaica is on the qualifying table. I mean, granted, they made the hex, but they're at the very bottom for a reason, right? And yeah, he carved up that defense on a team that was missing their best playmaker in Mikel Antonio, because he wasn't going to be released from West Ham. There was no reason to. I think they already knew that Jamaica's not going to qualify right now. They don't look like they can. And I don't understand this narrative, at least from what I assume, of wanting to push MLS players onto this squad. Like, I get it. Like, the style of play at MLS is about pressing and athleticism and just trying to get the ball back. Not necessarily so technical. But when you're going against teams like this that are going to outgrit you, essentially, then you got to have some other skill. And as much as I like Areola for what he brings to the table, I don't think it's the right fit for this team, unfortunately. You know, nothing against him personally. I just don't think that he fits what's necessary for the United States to be successful.
Yeah, like there was a rumor or a conspiracy, maybe just depends who you ask, that Berhalter was pressured to play MLS players at least one game of this round or a couple of games for these upcoming games. It came out and the tactical manager, which I'm not sure if you watched that YouTube channel, he said that there was, I think, Josh Sargent, manager, which he plays for Norwich, said that they didn't select him because they were focusing more on the U.S. What have you heard about that? Like, do you think there's a pressure from the MLS saying, hey, you got to play some MLS squads here? What are your thoughts?
You know, I don't have any interconnection with the league. to be upfront. But I mean, honestly, I could see that being a thing. Why wouldn't you? This is an American product. They are trying to sell American soccer. And when your best players are not American, what else can you possibly do to entice these fans that don't speak the languages that some of the superstars in the league happen to speak? We have plenty of young stars from South America that only speak Spanish, and that turns off, unfortunately, some of the fan base because they're not willing to learn, and that there's always that not just language divide, but like communal divide, and that's unfortunate. So I understand if the MLS is trying to say like, hey, get these guys on the roster so when they get back home, they can say that their player represents the United States men's national team, and hopefully that'll bring out some fans that like because there are fans that only follow the national team in this country. Like they don't have a club either overseas or over here or even in Mexico. Like they don't care, but when it's World Cup season, they watch. So if they can get a player, even for like Austin FC, if we can get a men's national team player, one that's still currently on the roster, that's a huge selling point for that club and for MLS as a whole.
Yeah, which you bring up a good point. What I noticed in the U.S. compared to other countries, we're kind of fragmented. There's fans that like the U.S. only. They only watch U.S. men's national team. Then there's like another base of fans that only watch Premier League.
Yeah.
And then there's another crowd that watches MLS. And I'm sure the people that watch MLS watch the U.S. What are your thoughts about that? I mean, obviously in England it's a little bit different. Like everyone follows like their club, and of course England and like their Euros or World Cup. But what are your thoughts about that situation here?
It's understandable. I mean, when you talk about like let's say England, that is generational fandom. Like you're born into it. It's so hard to kind of cross those barriers there because you grow up. Usually there's so many clubs in the same city, and you can just grow up and go down the street, and then there's the stadium, and you have that here with the NFL. I think again, I come from South Texas, and I know there's tons of Cowboy fans, and they're generational. They already had Mijo in the size 1 like Deion Sanders jersey back in the day, and they named their kid Deion, and it was all like, yeah, sure enough, like they grew up, they had kids, and their kids are Cowboys fans. It's just a cycle. But we don't have that here for soccer. And, you have to remember, we talked about the 94 World Cup. The whole premise of the United States getting the 94 World Cup was a promise to FIFA that we would have our own league by the next year. And even then we were late. So MLS didn't start until 96. So while it's been around for 25 plus years, they were still trying to get fans' attention. And then you have to think about the teams that got added, relocation, the teams that folded, the Chivas USA debacle, things like that. It's taken a long time to finally get some steady footing for that league to start to build maybe a generation in now, because those young kids that were our age when the league just started, they probably just had kids and are trying to get them to like this game too.
Now that we're getting the 26th World Cup, I haven't heard anything, but would you think FIFA would say, okay, we'll give you the World Cup, but you got to do promotion and relegation? What are your thoughts about
that? No, not even close, man. I hate to say it, but
you're not a pro-rel guy, right?
I mean, I like pro-rel. I understand the benefits for it, but I'm just pragmatic when it comes to my sports. And I think that's why I'm a pretty decent sports host, is just because, look, I would love to see pro-rel here in the United States, but I get it. The MLS was started as a single entity in order to protect investments. And if I'm a big-time owner and you're telling me like, hey, I can buy into this league just like you can buy into the NFL, I'll have this team, and no matter how bad it is, no matter how good it is, it's going to be in the same league. It's going to be major league, top tier. And you're going to keep on racking in the cash? Oh, that's an easy sell, right? But if you're trying to tell this owner, like, hey, there's a chance that your investment might lose money, and not because, like, your team's not trying. It's just that it's just so bad that it has to drop another league, and that you're going to lose half of your television money, and you're going to have to sign new players. Like, that's just so complicated, especially for the American sports fan, the typical one, just because it's not part of the games that we're used to seeing. And if you're an owner, I understand it's like that's a risky investment, but getting to stay in the top tier, that's class. And we've already seen that there's other teams trying to pull away to protect their investment. We already saw that the teams with the Super League try to pull away, and you see it in Liga MX. Like they have that rule where you can pay to not have to drop the league.
Wow. No, yeah. I totally agree with you, by the way. It's like, yeah, it's a great idea. I love it. But like the sports owner is already invested. He's got this system ready in place. I'm going to tell him hey, you might lose money if your team loses. Yeah, it's just way too late. If they did it back in '96, then of course it will work out. But an American owner would never understand that. Like what? I mean,
if you want to bring back MLS shootouts, then maybe we can talk, right?
Oh my gosh, I missed those. Those like originally started at like the NASL league back in the 70s and 80s, and they brought in the MLS, but they took it away. I think they should bring it back. Okay, sticking with MLS, which we'll get to Costa Rica soon. They're doing the Leagues Cup and next year or 2 years from now, where is the combined Liga MX MLS tournament all in 1 month. What are your thoughts about the format and anything else?
You might have to give me a refresher on the format, but I believe they're supposed to take like a month off to get this competition in.
Yeah.
And I understand why both leagues are doing it, but from what I want to know, because I'm not like a true hardcore fan, it's like, yeah, I like Austin FC, but I don't foresee us having a good chance at winning this thing anyways, especially with the way that we've played this year. But even then, it's like, what does this mean? So you win this competition, but there's nothing behind it. There's no history. It's not an FA Cup. There's no automatic qualification for CONCACAF Champions League tied to it or anything like that. So what's the purpose besides a cash grab?
It's a cash grab.
And,
That's
and I get it. I get it. If you're MLS, you're trying to hope to tap into some of those people that live here in the United States and only watch Liga MX. And if you're Liga MX, you're hoping to catch some of those MLS fans that might have a bad team and be like, hey, we don't play defense in Liga MX, so our soccer style is exciting and you should watch because our culture is a little different and we're actually rowdy and stuff like that. And I'm like, I can see where they're getting at, but I don't know about you, but I watch a lot of Lucha Libre because I cover pro wrestling for the radio station, and I'm all about stories. So like, you have to give me a juicy storyline to make me want to watch this fight that isn't necessarily real, that's already been predetermined. I need to have a good story to understand this outcome.
Yeah, totally agree with you on that one. Like they could have done like the FA Cup style, where they just kind of spread it out throughout the season. But then yet again, not many Americans will understand that. They'd rather see one big tournament, and it's probably more money involved. Anyways, tonight is USA versus Costa Rica. This is an older Costa Rica. I believe the average age are in their dirty 30s. There's a 39-year-old playing and also a 37-year-old playing.
Neither one of them is Navas, is it?
Yeah, and everyone's saying it's winnable, very winnable. What are your thoughts over tonight's match?
Okay, so when I had the soccer show, The Throw-In, on Austin Radio, I happened to have been on air right when and we kind of helped break that story and got its wings going, right? But that story when Columbus was going to come to Austin, when the crew was going to move here. So it's like, I have to have a natural hate now for everything Columbus. And that's where this game was being played at. And after the way that the fans showed up here in Austin, I need to be all pro Texas. But I do admit that, in the past, Columbus seems to have been a very strong fortress for the United States, both men and women's teams. So I'm hoping that will prove true tonight. But I am not 100% sure. Like, yeah, we all complained on social media. This game's at home, still missing Reina, still missing Pulisic. But after the way that they played, and I think, obviously rightfully the way that fans reacted to what was an abysmal performance, is that they're going to come out and that they're going to play better. But again, it's sad that this all kind of comes down to the shoulders of an 18-year-old, because if Pepe doesn't score 2 goals, I don't know where they're going to come from.
Yeah, and the striker position has been a question mark for a while, even before this group of players. You know, DK was definitely a candidate. Didn't really live up to the hype. Of course, you got Zardes. Some people say he doesn't belong in the team. He's an old timer. And, of course, you got Sargent, which plays in Norway. Is not very explosive. But the striker position has definitely been a question mark. There is Altidore, but some say he's already past his prime.
Well, isn't that the big question here, though, Santi? Is like this. There was a handful of those guys that are held over that didn't qualify for the last World Cup, and those are the guys that are supposed to lead the new crew in order to get to the World Cup this time around. Like, make this make sense, because you have a first-time coach, guy that's never had to do this at this level. You have players that didn't qualify from the last cycle that are supposed to lead these players to the new cycle, and then you're not bringing some of your best players along, even if they're healthy, because there's this supposed mandate that the MLS and the soccer don wants them to field more MLS players. And it's just like, please make this make sense, because I thought we were supposed to qualify for a World Cup, and that MLS and that like the men's national team were two separate entities. Like, yes, they work together, but like,
yeah,
it's not like the USMT makes decisions for any of the MLS clubs.
Back at your previous point, who from the old cycle should be on this team that have not played recently? I'm thinking, Altidore, Michael Bradley, but who do you think should be within the squad?
Nah, man, I can't even agree with you on that. Unfortunately, it really should have been one. Look, I'll be the first one to tell you they panicked with Jurgen Klinsmann. Look, I get his tactics weren't great. They could have got him a tactician, but the choices that he made, giving players a chance that normally wouldn't have been on the radar, and then kind of setting the stage for what we do now, chasing dual nationals that weren't going to get an opportunity to play for their stronger European or Mexican counterpart, but that were welcome to play here. And every coach has kind of copied that same textbook now, but they still haven't been able to win with it. So you talk about panic. We panicked then, and look where it got us. So it's like, I think that panicking again will kind of right the universe.
So you think it was premature to let go of Klinsmann back in October?
Oh yeah, I'll always go back to that.
Me
always
too. I think it was way too late in the game to make a coach change.
Yeah, everybody was like, oh, the players stopped playing for him. Look how they did under Arenas. And I'm like, yeah, at home after a coaching change one time. What happened when they went back on the road and it was a must win? They didn't have it. They tried to play old school American soccer and they didn't have the grit to go with that combination. And that's what concerns me right now, is just that we have a banged up Pulisic, Reina is hurt, and we didn't take any real extra strikers. And like, why not let Weah play the 9 role and see what he can do? He doesn't have to necessarily be out on the wing. There's just a lot of questions.
Yeah. There is rumor, which I think is becoming true. Matt Turner will not be starting tonight. Zach Steffen will be at the goalkeeper position. What are your thoughts about that?
I'm okay with it, but that's because I'm also a Manchester City fan. And but I mean, let's be honest. If Steffen's going to be the backup, he's not the third goalkeeper at City. He's the backup. If he's playing in the Premier League, regardless if he's the backup, he's getting to see world-class competition every day and training. He should be the number one when healthy. No disrespect to Turner in the way that he's
you're
played.
a Steffen guy more than Turner.
No, yeah. I mean, I guess if you have to word it that way, because it's like, no disrespect to Matt Turner. He's been playing very well. It's just that Steffen is the more talented guy. Like, if you told me today we qualify for the World Cup and you're going to say this guy is going to be the first one that's going to start game one of the knockout stages, like, yeah, it's going to be Steffen, because he's the guy that's, played in Champions League. He's been there. He's been on the bench. He at least knows what it's about. And I like that experience, especially for a team that doesn't have a whole lot of experience in big-time games like that, besides Pulisic, who we win against. And to have that available, that he can play.
Yeah.
So I'm not concerned.
Yeah, I'm more of like the player has to play 90-minute games. But I see your point of, being in training, and yes, going up against a De Bruyne or like a Foden in practice. I know it's a lot there, but yeah, we'll see. Matt Turner has to prove it still. He has had a few mistakes here and there, but we'll see. I think the number one goalkeeper might be up for grabs.
Well, that's the beauty of the United States men's national team, is that they've always been able to produce world-class goalkeepers. Because I talked about Keller, you think about Brad Friedel, Tim Howard, all those guys ended up playing in. Yeah, I mean, all those guys ended up playing in Europe at one time or another. So if there's anything that the United States gets right soccer-wise, it's always goalkeepers. So I'm not too concerned who's back there, because more often than not, they're pretty solid. But, I mean, when you play for a Guardiola-led squad, that tells me that Pep saw something in this kid and was like, look, he must have good feet. He must make good decisions, or else he wouldn't be the second goalkeeper for a Pep Guardiola side.
Okay, predictions for tonight. Justin Simmons, USA versus Costa Rica. What is your score line?
It's 2-1 U.S., but it's not pretty. Costa Rica's going to fight. Definitely going to come. I don't think these goals come from the run of play. I really think that it's going to be dead ball situations, just outside the box, corner kicks. That's going to lead to the game winner for sure.
It's going to be a tight game. I've been hearing 4-1, 6-0. I don't know.
People are way too overconfident. I mean, this team, they're inconsistent because they're young, but let's admit, when they're good, they cover up a lot of the flaws tactically for Coach Berhalter. And when they aren't good, then you question everything, because the one thing as a coach is should be able to motivate the player and understand how to utilize them, but more importantly, motivate, because this is World Cup qualifying. It's going to get tough. Things get CONCACAF-y when you travel abroad.
With no VAR.
And it's like, how can we not be prepared for that? How can we not? Do we need to put together a reel to show the new players of how guys used to get hacked down back in the 90s?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Or get a pep talk from Landon Donovan.
That's one thing that's really surprised me. Where are those guys? Are those guys making appearances in this locker room? We've seen them at games. I know Kobe Jones was here in Austin. He was watching the game from up top, and Lawless was in the crowd. He was watching the game here as well. But do those guys call up, Greg Berhalter and be like, yo, I need to talk to this squad, legitimately, because right now everybody sucks. And we need to change that, because those players should be upset that the legacy that they built isn't being seen through.
Let's go, boys. Well, there you have it, 2-1 by Justin Simmons. Also, Austin, Texas hosted their first World Cup qualifier, and they played against Jamaica. Can you foresee Austin be a nice, permanent go-to city to host more World Cup qualifiers?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we have had some of the best fans when it comes to soccer. When I was hosting that soccer radio show, we didn't have really a soccer team to watch. We had the PDL team that folded and moved to Orlando that ended up becoming Orlando City. Yeah, that was the original Austin Aztecs. And then we had the 2.0 team, and we lost them in the flood here that one year. But, we had a radio show talking about soccer because there's always been that love for the Premier League teams, and Austin had always consistently been near the top of the television rankings when it came to viewership for both men and women's World Cup. So what I saw out at the Q last time when they hosted for the first time a World Cup qualifier against Jamaica didn't surprise me. I think it definitely should become a must-stop for the United States men and women on their World Cup qualifying campaigns in the future. And one of those teams, one of these venues that should host some of the bigger matches going forward, the only thing it has working against it is some of the seating. And obviously, if we were to play Mexico, I don't foresee us hosting that match, because I think it would be like an 80-20 crowd. And that's just how it goes, especially in Texas. But I'm here for it, because I love the fact that everybody shows up for those type of matches.
I was going to ask you, hey, would that be a Mexico safe place? No, it's not. It's in the bulk of it right now. I mean, it's probably be much easier in Austin than Dallas, but it's anywhere in Texas is not Mexico USA friendly when it comes to soccer. So yeah,
that's why they're playing those matches up in Columbus.
Yeah, in Cincinnati, which I've been hearing nowhere safe. But hey, and this time, Kyle Costa Rica will not be going to Colorado to play the U.S. You remember that snow game?
Yeah, I do.
It was classic,
I definitely
man.
do. That's why I was kind of like, oh, that's right. Kind of like start walking me back in the head, like, oh, when our teams like had Clint Dempsey and were gritty, and those are the type of wins that we haven't seen from this U.S. side. Like, can you win when it's dirty? Can you win when it's not clean? Can you win when things are going tough? Can you find a way to scrap a goal when you're not hitting all cylinders? And the answer has been, over one whole qualifying cycle going into this one, a resounding no. And I think that's what's the most frustrating, is knowing that we have the talent, but for some reason don't have the heart.
Justin,
where is that? Why is that lack?
Yeah, Justin Simmons really much summarized it. I think, yeah, these players are learning on the go. Same for Berhalter. These two, well, Berhalter has been in the past. I know he's played for the U.S. team in the past, but like very small amounts. But yeah, they're definitely learning on the go. I foresee Berhalter, actually, now thinking about it, maybe being like a 2-cycle World Cup coach. You think?
Ooh, don't say that, man. That's scary. But let me ask you this, Santiago.
Premature. Sorry about that.
Let me ask you this. What happens if they lose tonight?
Wow.
Is it too soon to fire him then? Because then we would be in definite trouble.
I'll definitely have to evaluate the other results and see where we stand in the table.
Why does that matter? Why does the performance of our squad matter at the results of other people's squad?
I mean,
because I'm not concerned about them. Our destiny in the World Cup is in our hands. We're already near the top of the table. All we have to do is win at the home, get draws on the road, and we can't do that consistently. So why should we be concerned because Panama can't beat Mexico or something like that? Like that's not going to matter when the World Cup shows up.
Yeah. Well, here's why my argument with Panama was I can't say legit loss, but it was definitely Panama has let the least amount of goals in the net, so they have a good defense, and we're number 2. So that's why I didn't see much of a high-scoring game. I think like the best case scenario was going to be a tie. I don't think we could have beat Panama because they don't let in too many goals. That's just my argument with Panama.
Oh, that's understandable.
Yeah.
But again, no Mikel Antonio for Jamaica. The U.S. wasn't concerned about goals coming in against Jamaica.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if they're going to be concerned about goals coming in against Costa Rica. Maybe that might not be so smart.
Yeah.
But then again, this isn't the same team of is it Brian Ruiz? Was that the guy who I'm thinking of?
Yeah, he's like the captain, or was he like the captain for Costa Rica back in the day?
I think he played forward, right? One of the captains at one point, that's for
think
sure.
So I only remember one choke and the goalkeeper from Costa Rica.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know where the goals are going to come from Costa Rica, but obviously this is a team that's done well when they do get into the World Cup. Last time we saw them get to a knockout stage. Last time they did qualify. So,
but this is a weak Costa Rica. This is not the scary one that we saw 4 years ago.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Or even 8 years ago.
On the wrong side of Chile.
So starting lineup just came out. Zach Steffen, Serginho Dest, Tyler Adams, Anthony Robinson, Yunus Musa, Ariola, McKennie, Aronson, Robinson, Richards, and Pepe. Thoughts?
I mean, definitely better than what they sent out against Panama. I'll be interested to see, like, if we're struggling, does he make switches early, or does he try to find these guys, get into a groove? Obviously, there's questions against Ariola. Like, is he going to be good against a defense that's supposed to be much more stingy than what Jamaica is, despite playing in the United States this time around? How quickly did they acclimate getting back to the United States? Did they take this loss hard? I mean, there's just so many questions. But my big thing is, if they don't perform tonight, I mean, Berhalter out definitely should be on the table.
Justin says it. If they lose tonight, Berhalter is out. Who will be your replacement?
Oh, I think it goes back to you, Piojo Herrera. Again, the fieriness, like that need, like that grit. Spark, like that's something. Yeah, that's something that this team is lacking.
The Mamba mentality.
I would like to get away from the decision makers of the United States Soccer Federation for for this type of head coach necessarily. I don't want somebody that's friends or brother or somebody that's already on the board.
It would be up to Ernie Stewart, I believe.
I don't think that makes it any better
I
because he
know.
helped make this
And maybe
decision.
McBride. I'm not sure that helps, but
Yeah, but see, it's the same group. It's like, I
yeah, I
don't
don't
know
know,
if you ever
dude.
watch pro wrestling, but it's like the NWO or DX. You know, these guys all make decisions in the background, and that's how they got their spots on television, is because they had
It's
the
all
political
fixed.
game.
Yeah, like I said, but you did bring up a good point. We do have the resources to hire a big time coach like a Mourinho, maybe a
Yeah.
Pep.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they'll ever want to take on the job here just because they'll never ever have the players that are going to fit their
Yeah, they're gonna
systems.
say, well, I don't know. Maybe they'll say, hey, McKennie, Pulisic. Okay.
Yeah, maybe when they're done being super competitive and they want to take on this task, I think you kind of have to have the egotism of Mourinho, and his style would definitely fit much better. I think it would be easier to adapt to American soccer. Just kind of sit, park the bus, need a couple of playmakers, keep your formation tights, and get out on the counter and win. Obviously, Pep, I think he would be like in dismay of seeing how our technical skills developed at a very young age here, and that he wouldn't be able to interject any of his ideas really unless he found some really high tier caliber players here.
And there you have it, Justin Simmons, the man, the myth, who's very passionate for the U.S. and Manchester City, as we found out tonight. Justin, what is the best way to reach you online for people to pick your brain about the U.S. men's national team?
Hey, I appreciate it again, Santi. I'm really easy to find on the social media. It's at the Smash Simmons, and that's everything from Twitter to Instagram to TikTok to even my Twitch when I do get on. I don't really play a whole lot of games besides like FIFA. And I don't know if you play any games, but I've been playing Wizard of Legend here with my roommate. And we're kind of hooked on that. We've been playing that for like 3 years, but they just had an update recently, and that kind of got us back into it.
Interesting. No, I've not played video games since, oh my gosh, since college maybe, or maybe before that. I just never got into it. But FIFA, sometimes on my iPhone, I kind of get tempted to try out some players, and having Clint Dempsey on the bench for Barcelona, things like that. But no, definitely. It's definitely fun sometimes. Anyways, you can reach us at the Sportscast 1 or at the sportscast.net. Here at the Sportscast, we love soccer, the world of football. We cover Premier League, MLS, and the U.S. men's national team. You can watch the game tonight on ESPN2 or ESPN Plus or TDN. I think they show all the games. They have almost every tournament, don't they?
Oh, basically, I've been watching. There's been people that have been watching that have been paying for Champions League here in the United States because they have to watch it on what, CBS Sports or the
Paramount
Plus.
Plus. It's like $5-6
Yeah,
a month.
I'm like, look, my Spanish isn't great, but just turn it over to Univision and watch it for free
Yeah,
because
dude. I have Fubo TV, and I just watch the Champions League or any other tournament on TDN. I don't want to pay an extra $5 to watch
yeah,
Clint Dempsey, in halftime.
basically, yeah. It's like, look, man, it's soccer. You don't have to know everything that they're saying, and does it really? And if anything, I like the excitement of more so of like the Spanish speaking commentators. I hate I'm half, so I've been trying to utilize that more in my soccer calls when I do sports because I call a lot of small college and stuff like that. Like simple things like El Tunel and maybe like the passes and then like the
Yeah.
longer passionate goal calls. I still don't think that most American soccer fans are on board with that, but I'm like, man, don't you want me to be excited about the fact that your team scored? That's what they're
It's
paying me for.
different. Yeah, like I like the British actually when it comes to English commentating. I think they let the game and the crowd lead the like the audio. I think that they do it best. But yeah, when it comes to Spanish, they have a lot more energy. It's like 100 times. And the same for the French. If you listen to the French
Oh yeah.
broadcasting, they're pretty good. So, but
Yeah, that's what I want to try to interject into the American sports landscape. But I get it, most
yeah,
American sports fans can be boring and they like it just like real proper without the theatrics. But I'm like, nah, I want it to be like pro wrestling. I want it to be a spectacle, and I want you to be excited even though you're 1,000 miles away for this game.
who's your favorite commentator? Like Jim Lance or Marv Albert or Andres Cantor? Who's been your
That's
favorite?
that's a hard
Loaded. I
question.
know it is.
Well, no, it's just because like some guys get into this business, and I'm sure that they've watched a lot of people, but it's just like I've just watched a lot of sports, and I mean I respect all those guys from what they have been able to accomplish, and like the Costas and Al Michaels and all those guys, and even guys like now like Gus Johnson and some of the younger guys that are on the scene, like Ian Eagle's son, Noah Eagle. Like, that's a hard job, and I'm sure that he had some connections even at 21 to get it, but to be good at it, it takes some work, and there's a lot of really good broadcasters out there. I can't say that I really enjoy any one of them in particular, and that goes even for people like Vince Scully. And like I said, I watched a lot of pro wrestling, so I think Jim Ross is still one of the best ones ever to do it, but you have some other ones.
Yeah.
But like, I never wanted to be anybody else. I just want to be the best me that I can be. So it's like, yeah, it might take little things from here or there, but ultimately I'm just kind of like a mishmash of everything I kind of like. And I'll come up with things out of left field that don't come from anywhere, just because you got to stand out in this business. I mean, when everybody looks the same, sounds the same, what's the difference between me and the next person?
Exactly. And we'll definitely got to have you back to talk about, broadcasting as a whole and, broadcasting in soccer, because this stuff is it's a whole different world. It's like an underworld, I call it. I had Fernando Fiore last year on this podcast.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and he said, it's just very competitive. I think he was telling me something exaggerated. It's like 1 million people trying to apply for that one job. I don't know if that's true.
No, but he's right, though, and I've been surprised by that, because I would try to get like these small-time baseball jobs, and the guy would be like, look, I have like 200 and something applicants.
Oh, wow.
Everybody sent everything that I asked for. Like, where's your stuff? And it'd be like, oh, I guess I just didn't want it that bad. And like, I have friends that work AA baseball, but it was hard. And that's not what I want to do. It's my least favorite sport is baseball. But yeah,
me too. Even though I kind of watched like the postseason a little bit closer.
Yeah, because it means something.
Yeah, it does.
162 games.
Oh my God, it's too long. I'm not sure who watches every single of them, but I'm sure there's people at. Anyways, tonight.
Let me say something.
Yeah.
Say real quick, just in case anybody's looking for a boxing commentator. I do have a match coming up that I'm doing on October 22nd that you'll be able to see on YouTube. But if anybody else needs one, cool, around the Southwest area, hit me up, because I'm actually really good at it.
The Smash Simmons on Twitter, hit him up. What'd you think about the Tyson Fury fight against Wilder?
Oh man, I don't know how much time you have, but we would be here all day. I spent money to watch that fight. Money well spent.
Everyone tells me that.
I've seen that.
I was tired that night because I had a lot of sports going on. USA Panama on Sunday. I was like, I don't know if I could do it, and I went to bed early.
You should have. I mean, Saturday was probably the best sports Saturday I've witnessed in like a decade. I mean, you had the UT upset, you had the A&M win, you had like BYU lose to an unranked Boise State team, and then you had Iowa beating Penn State, and then you had Tyson Fury getting knocked down twice in one round, getting back up to school. Wilder, who went out on his shield, man. That guy, you can question his ability, but man, you can't question his heart.
What time did the fight start? Like around 10 p.m. Eastern or so? Or was it 11?
Oh man, that's right. You're on Eastern time zone.
Yeah.
You probably wouldn't have seen the fight start until around midnight, because Wilder walked late. He was like, I'm not used to walking first. He made everybody wait like an extra 30 to 40 minutes before he even decided to walk. But after that, I mean, it was so worth it. So worth it.
I might have not have been able to watch it if it was midnight. Anyways, Justin Simmons, soccer broadcaster, the Smash Simmons on Twitter, the sportscast.net. Follow US Soccer. This is exciting. Probably one of the best generations. Hopefully not the last, but we'll see the best. Justin Simmons, I appreciate you coming on to the Sportscast.
Hey, thank you again for having me, Santiago. Hopefully we get a chance to chat with you again sometime.
Absolutely.